Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Welcome back to HR Week 2022. Now, I don't know where you've been, hopefully, well, not hopefully, but I can imagine perhaps it's sometime over the last 60 minutes since we were last together. Maybe you went over to the expo zone, the expo area, and had a look around and really got some inspiration and absorbed some great insights as well. Maybe you went over to the learning zone, doing the same thing as well, or maybe just simply clicking around and really having a look at really what's on offer in terms of this experience online. Whatever you're doing, I'm sure that you're getting value. Hopefully you're getting value out of what you've had already. And if you've enjoyed it so far, you're going to enjoy it right now as well, because we're jumping in now to one of two expert talks. So expert exchange, conversation, really delving into a topic and really getting as much value out for the audience as well. So this is essentially all about unleashing the power of co-creation, a partnership between HR, transformation, and communication officers. I'm intrigued as much as you are. I'd like now to introduce the moderator, the interviewer, let's say, who's going to run this conversation certainly in the right direction, and that is from Al-Dahra, Ivana Mihajlović. Ivana, are you there?
Hi, Peter. Thank you very much for this enthusiastic introduction.
Well, I try to be enthusiastic as much as I can. And guess what, Ivana? The thing is, I think I know too much about too many people here at HR Week, and I just feel I just have this feeling that you are an owner of a beautiful, beautiful white cat. Is that right?
Oh my gosh! How did you find that out?
How did I didn't. I just can feel it. I look at you, and I look into your eyes, and I can feel.
You have a crystal ball.
Is that true? Is that true? Yeah, maybe I do.
It's true. But please tell me something about my future, regardless of the cat.
You're going to have a great session right now, and it's going to be fabulous.
Thank you.
There we are. Listen, I'll leave it up to you now, and have a good exchange.
Thank you very much. It is with great pleasure that I can introduce two of our panelists for today, two experts, as Peter already announced we would have on our topic. First is Nevena Tomasevic. She's a Chief Transformation Officer in Regents University, and the other girl is Astrid Reyes from Montreal, Canada, working as a communication expert for enterprises and corporation as well. So, girls, we're lucky to have you. Welcome on board. Hope you're well. Do you have cats or dogs anyhow?
A dog, so I apologize ahead of time if there's any barking in the background or squeaky balls. I apologize in advance. It may happen.
As you know, I don't have them anymore, but if you remember, a long time ago, I used to have a German Shepherd and also a very similar cat to yours, so not anymore.
Great. We are ready to start our panel regarding the topic of unleashing the power of cooperation between HR, communication, and transformation executives. And I would start first with Nevena, considering her wide experience with HR, because her background before Regents University was also within the company that was HR related. And considering your experience, Nena, how do you see influence of HR in driving people management, and especially transformation processes that you are involved with?
I think it's a very interesting question, because things have certainly changed in the past, I would say 2 years during COVID, because HR function is no longer just an HR function. It's transitioned into people management or people function. We don't have any more directors of HR. We have directors of people. We don't have HR managers. We have people managers, etc. And the way that I see them is as right hand for every, not just transformation, but the function and organization of the whole company. So what is really key for me, for example, when I talk to HR professionals or our people department, is that they see me as a contributor, and I see them as a contributor as well. So the collaboration is the most important thing.
And how do you manage that collaboration? Does it come from your perspective as an initiative from transformation officers, or from HR, or somebody else is a sponsor of the project?
So from my experience, and obviously it may be different to other people, my experience is that we would drive transformation. So if I just introduce my function at the moment, IT division is below me, projects, strategic projects, or PMO in some companies they're called, and the digital transformation, business intelligence. So it's that sort of transformation. We look at things, how we drive change using technology, or how we drive change by changing processes around the institution. And that's been my, let's say, expertise for the last 15 years. The way that the collaboration works is that we would normally drive it. So we would have projects from the business, we would listen to our clients, we would listen to our internal and external customers, obviously depending on the business we're talking about. And when we talk to HR about the skill set that we need, about the organization we need, they would support us in setting KPIs, following them through, if there's any additional training we want to introduce to existing members of staff. So that sort of things. But the transformation, from my experience, wasn't necessarily driven by the HR or people department. It came from the need of the business. And we are supporters or enablers of that change.
And how satisfied you were so far with your experience with HR support?
It's an interesting. So that's a good question. I think it's kind of mixed. There's mixed feelings, because I worked in 3 different, in a way, industries. Sometimes one of the concerns that I often have with people department is that they start owning too much, or they feel like they're owners of the people in the company. And recently, when I was talking to somebody, they said, to me, HR is like a supply chain function. And I really resonate with that. So you want to be in charge of, or you want to understand the resources that are required for the organization to function. You want to understand how the organization should be set up, what sort of teams should we have, how should they collaborate, how the skill set is organized. Is there a skill set that is lacking? Is there a skill set in one part of the organization that could support another part of the organization? What training can we offer? What compensation should we put in place? What sort of KPIs and objectives? And PDR is a well-known, let's say, acronym, but how do we manage performance? How do we encourage performance, etc.? And then obviously, as part of the pandemic, it's all about creating a very efficient, but also very effective organization, which is hybrid. So allowing people to stay at home, work from home, but also supporting them in being productive. So I think that's kind of, I see it as in my experience, it's been mixed. Sometimes I felt like HR is trying to own a process, which is not really their area, because we should all enable each other and support each other rather than own part of the process. But equally on some other sides, most recently at Regent's University, I have a really great experience with the people department, or they're still called HR department, in supporting me restructure part of the team, find out what the skill set that is missing, because we're a small institution, and they're doing a fantastic job also with the admin side of things. So not just strategic, but also supporting me with the admin.
I'm glad to hear that. Congratulations to your HR team. They can share best practice, I hope, in some of the coming conferences. And Astrid, from your communication perspective and your experience, how do you see this cooperation with HR?
Well, I think that HR has a pretty big responsibility to helping employees thrive, right? And that is a big part or a big component of transformation, because it's not only the administrative functions, like hiring or payroll, and these day-to-day activities, policies, etc., but it's also career growth, training and development, well-being. So all of these items pretty much influence the process of transformation. And then internal comms sort of becomes their key partner in how do we roll out these programs, these standards, in a way that will resonate with employees and drive the engagement. Because ultimately, that's what you want. You want the programs that you're creating as an HR department, or the standards, to have a response. You want people to engage with it. So that's the way I see it in terms of communications. It's more about the organizational culture that you're going to try to build with all these programs that you have in place, but also then the internal support that you will provide. That I'm not as involved. I'm more in terms of engagement and internal communications, and that's where I see their support or their influence.
And so far, in your experience, how were they successful in supporting the processes that you mentioned?
So I think HR sort of has the expertise, and then internal communications is how they turn it into action. So the way that I see it is HR will provide me with these programs. They're going to put them together because they know what is required, whether that's for the success of the organization, whether that is to support an organizational change that is happening, or just in general, a policy that needs to be standardized and follow. So they have that expertise. They know how to put it together. But then the support of internal communications comes into how do we communicate this? How do we send the proper messaging? Especially in global organizations, you have to be careful how the types of messages that you share, the channels that you use, and the content that you put in them. So there's that collaboration. And so, yes, HR will be the one to provide sort of the meat and potatoes and tell you what needs to be done and why. And then internal communications will support in, let's get this done, let's turn it into action, communicate it to people and get that action from them, but also get the feedback, because internal communications campaigns drive that two-way conversation that you want to know what your employees are thinking and what they're feeling. So that's how I see the collaboration from my perspective.
Thank you. And while we were preparing this panel, we agreed that we would not be as politically correct as we could, then that we should make a provocative conversation and speak practically and realistically about the processes and how HR is handling the issues on the table. And I'm wondering, what do you find most annoying when it comes to working with HR? Because I see the opportunity for people who are listening to learn from your experiences, because actually if you find something annoying, I see it as an opportunity to turn it something as a learning, not just as a negative feedback, but really constructive. And I'm looking forward to your experiences in that matter, to share it. Nena.
Yeah, sure. I think it's going to be, it's an interesting question also because Astrid is here. So certainly in my experience, it's been interesting to see the HR team adopt an attitude of tell and do. And I think that happened for various reasons, for a number of reasons. Let's say during the pandemic, decision-making has become much faster. We had to make decisions faster. We had to inform people of changes, let's say, do they have to wear a mask? Do they not have to wear a mask? Entrances they have to take, different things like that. Astrid mentioned well-being. I think I'm actually really, really glad that well-being became a forefront of our conversations at every level of the organization, in particular at executive level. One of the challenges, I think, is that tell and do approach, which normally HR would promote the policy or changes in the policy. They would ask internal comms to help them with putting the right message in the right format, using the right channels. And then the expectation is you will read this and you will absorb it and you will accept it and you will do it. And I think that's becoming now potentially a slightly bigger challenge, because people are now going back to normal for the last few months and they actually don't like the tell and do approach. So during the pandemic, they were adapting to change. They were more receptive of those messaging, but now perhaps less so. And I think that's been one of the main I would say, challenges that I have had. The messaging needs to be, first of all, communicated using the right channels. People stopped reading emails and intranet and WhatsApp messages and Teams messages and Zoom and all of that. And they actually just want something which is really precise, really collaborative, and an invitation rather than you're telling me something and I'm expected to just do it. So that's been, I would say that's been the biggest challenge and the biggest thing that I fundamentally disliked. But equally, on the flip side of that coin, it has given the people team a really good power in a way, using power here carefully, because now they can send messaging out to people which may be more receptive than before, because before they would not even read it. Now they're perhaps maybe a little bit more likely to read it. So it's a little bit of a balancing act at the moment, I would say. But yes, that's why I think, Astrid, it will be interesting to hear from you, because obviously you would receive some of these messages and would have to put them in a format which people will actually want to read and use the channels that they want to use.
So you actually talked on the topics that I also wanted to touch on, because one of the, I would say, challenges of working with HR is how do you deliver the messages, right? And you want to make sure that, yes, if it's a policy or if it's a new standard that everyone needs to follow, of course, you're going to drive that message to make sure that it's understood. However, you cannot write a 3-paragraph email. You need to make it a little more concise, go with succinct messages, use links where possible. People like self-service. So if you receive an email with 3 paragraphs, they probably don't want to read it. They want you to tell them in the title and in 1 paragraph, this is what it is, here's what you need to do, and this is why it matters. Please visit this link to go see the complete policy or to complete the mandatory training or whatever it is, right? So there's that. There's a need to have more friendly messages, short messages, because people don't want to spend time reading things. They already have their workload to worry about, so they don't want to read a communication that is going to take them too long. So keeping it clear, and short, I think is key. But also, where possible, make it fun, make it interesting. You don't have to write an email. It could be a video message from one of your presidents or from the HR VP or director, right? And that's more a person talking to you. So you don't have to read it. You also hear it from the person. Yes, you can use key messages, but they can also put it in their own words to make it more, to create a connection. Ultimately, what you want is to create a connection. Like I said, there's a workload. There's all kinds of things happening for people and their families, especially after the pandemic. A lot is going on. So make it interesting. Make me want to read what you need to tell me or the guideline that I need to follow. So yes, that has been, I think, a challenge for many people in communications, is trying to work with HR on how do you deliver these messages in a way that will have an impact and drive that engagement rather than, wow, another email from HR. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm familiar with that, and I would greatly appreciate support from both transformation and communication officers in the process. And so along those lines, how would you describe what skills and knowledge should ideal HR business partner possess? Neno?
So for me, and perhaps another element of context, in the last company I worked for, which I left about five months ago, GI Group in the UK was a group of 5 companies, 3 of which were recruitment companies. So from now, in a very different environment, let's say very different sector, much smaller scope in some respect. For me, what is really important is that the HR partner is really clear on the processes, is there to support things to move fast, is there to advise if there is something that they can advise on. Let's say they have a strength in evaluating the job description, understanding how to put the message across in the best way, understanding which channels and which advertising websites we should use for posting a particular vacancy. And then also equally understanding that, for example, for a particular skill set, if we're doing salary evaluations or if we're doing recruitment in a particular, with a particular skill set, to understand that we should be using recruiters and who are the best recruitment agencies to use. So understanding where, for example, internally we have a skill set for a particular part of the HR process, let's say that's admin and language and messaging and advertising, the role, and then separately understanding where the weaknesses are and being capable to find the right partners to help us in that. So that's for me really, really key. Because in the past, for example, I valued hugely within GI Group having those 3 recruitment agencies, because if I was looking for a particular role, I knew exactly which recruiters to ask to help me find that role. And that's something that I think brings a huge value to HR departments everywhere.
Thank you. And Astrid, for you?
I think what I look for primarily in an HR partner is understanding of the audience, and what I mean by that is staying in the know. What do my employees need? How is my culture changing? And the way to know that is really to listen to feedback, right? So HR does different types of surveys through the year, but then you can also rely on the feedback that you get through communications campaigns, especially those that invite for two-way dialogue, like for example, if it's some kind of contest or maybe a trivia, or even leaving comments, if it's on the intranet, for example, or Yammer feeds or any other channel or teams that allow for employees to respond. Listen to that feedback and sort of take that into account, because, especially in global organizations, yes, you need to have global standards, but you also have cultural differences. So you need to understand, what are these needs that are happening in each region? How do you collaborate with the HR business partner at that location to make, this global standard fit and make sure that it's followed? So I think just having an open mind and really listening to the feedback that is being provided through different avenues, like I mentioned, that's very important to just stay in the know and stay fresh with the feedback that you're receiving, so that you can reflect that either when you create new programs or when you update or improve the current ones. And I think another important thing that I personally think is very important, you want to attract great talent, but you also need to focus on retention. How do you keep the people that you already had? Because you hired valuable people. You hired them because they offered you something that you didn't have. But, you also need to keep them interested and keep them excited. So that's another reason why it's important to listen to feedback, because a lot of HR functions focus primarily, well, we need new people, we need more people to support us, or this department is growing, so we need to hire the talent. Yes, that's important. That's a key part of HR, but also you already have people in place. So how do you maintain those people so that they don't leave and they thrive, right? Ultimately, that's what you want. You want your employees to thrive. So I would say those are the 2 areas that I would like, for HR to really focus on.
Thank you. Those
I
are
think
really...
it's an interesting, if you don't mind me just jumping in quickly. So I think it's really interesting, Astrid, you mentioned culture and retention, because in my view, HR is also a collaborator, hub or connector of people, especially in large institutions. In smaller institutions, I think that's a bit easier to manage. But in larger institutions where you have multiple sites, let's say global institutions where you have obviously multiple countries as well, understanding, for example, there is a skill set missing over here. This manager is struggling to recruit or retain staff for a particular reason. So what is somebody else doing really well that we can buddy them up, learn from each other, and how do we share the skill set? So in terms of retention, I would also add collaboration there, again, as a collaborative hub, understanding what is lacking where and what is maybe present somewhere else, and connecting those dots together so as to ensure that the organization, obviously, pushes forward in whatever way that is relevant. But then in terms of the culture, I think it's really important, and this is something maybe going back to the previous question as well that you asked, Ivana, is that culture changes constantly, but the core values should really remain the same.
They remain.
Culture can change, but the purpose of the organization, what are our key values, and using that as a point of reference whenever there are any issues in retention, to say, okay, why are we really struggling to retain people? What has changed, or what may have been influencing this retention for people to leave the organization? So I like that very much, Astrid, as you mentioned, culture and retention. I think that's really important, and I agree with that.
Great, wonderful insights and a lot of recommendations that HR should apply in everyday work. And I believe it's really important that we don't forget the purpose of our work, and as you said, core values. Actually, on the line of retention, there is a new motto in HR circles in Serbia that retention is new recruitment. So this
I think
really,
that makes perfect sense, to be honest.
yeah. So let's not forget that. And considering that we are over with the time, I would like to thank you for your time that you took to participate and share your experience and recommendations with HR community. And I hope we meet again. And thank you very much. Enjoy your day, and we'll keep in touch.
Thank you.
It was
Bye-bye.
a pleasure. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
It's again another session that I'm sure could have just continued on and on, sharing valuable ideas and information as well. Again, not really for those of you that were with us, but again, this session, together with every other session as well, will be on demand, I believe, very shortly after the event has been completed at the end of this week, probably next week at some stage. But again, this session together with every other session, every single second of HR Week 2022 will be available for those of you that had a ticket. Right, what we're going to do now is take a very, very short break indeed, give you a chance to maybe freshen up, relax, maybe look at something else that's on the platform as well. We'll be back very shortly. Again, you have to make a choice, not a difficult, maybe a difficult choice, I don't know, but you simply have to make a choice between two different sessions: organizational design or well-being. Is well-being a strategic question? Either one of those. Which one is it going to be? I don't know. Maybe you already know, but simply you make the choice and then join us back. I'll be taking over the organizational design session here on track A. The other one, somebody else will be doing that naturally, and we'll be doing this at 3:55. So join us back here, 3:55, for the next session of HR Week 2022.